When police opened the baby monitor, there were no batteries inside. Every night at exactly 3:13 a.m., a hallway camera detected motion. And in the final voicemail, the voice belonged to someone who had already died. Tonight, from the Shadow Ledger, here are 3 true horror stories you shouldn't listen to alone. If you're listening to this late at night, you might want to keep a light on, because these stories don't rely on monsters, they rely on something much worse. The feeling that what happened could happen to you. Story 1. The voice in the baby monitor. At 2:47 a.m., a young mother woke up to a sound that didn't belong in her bedroom. At first, it was so faint that she almost stayed asleep, just a soft, crackling noise, the kind of broken static that electronics sometimes make in the middle of the night. She rolled over in bed and looked toward the dresser where the baby monitor sat. Its tiny red light was on. That alone wasn't strange. She often kept it on through the night so she could hear if her son woke up. But what made her sit up immediately was the sound that came next. A voice. Low. Male. Barely above a whisper. At first, she couldn't make out the words. She just froze in place, staring into the dark, listening. And then she heard it clearly. He's not sleeping. She felt her entire body go cold. For a second, she actually convinced herself she must have imagined it. Maybe she was still half asleep. Maybe it had been part of a dream. Maybe it was some kind of crossed frequency from another device. But then the monitor crackled again, and she heard breathing. Not a baby, not static, breathing. She grabbed the monitor with both hands and held it close to her ear. Nothing. Just silence. The room around her suddenly felt much darker than it had a few seconds earlier. Her son's bedroom was just down the hallway, and she was afraid of what she might find if she opened that door. But she ran anyway. She threw the nursery door open and reached for the light. The room was exactly as it should have been. Quiet. Still. Her child was asleep in the crib, curled under a blanket. No movement, no sound, no sign that anyone had been in the room. She checked everything anyway. Under the crib, inside the closet, behind the curtains, even under the small rocking chair in the corner. Nothing. She looked at the window. Locked. The nursery felt normal. Too normal. That was somehow worse, because now she had no explanation. She picked up her son and held him for a moment, just to reassure herself he was okay. Then she put him back down and returned to her bedroom. This time, she unplugged the baby monitor completely, not just turned it off, unplugged it. She stared at it for a few seconds after pulling the cord, waiting to see if the red light would disappear. It did. She put it face down on the dresser and climbed back into bed. Her heart was still racing. She kept replaying the words in her head. He's not sleeping. The thing that disturbed her most wasn't just that she had heard a voice. It was the tone, the way it had been said. Not angry, not rushed, just calm, like whoever said it was already inside the house, watching. She didn't sleep after that. She lay awake in the dark, staring toward the nursery door, listening to every tiny sound in the house. The refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the wood settling in the hallway, the faint sound of wind against the window. And then, around 10 minutes later, she heard it again. The baby monitor, crackling. She slowly turned her head toward the dresser. The red light was back on, even though she had unplugged it. She sat up so fast she nearly fell out of bed. And then the voice returned. This time, it sounded closer, more intimate, like it was right beside her ear. And it whispered, "I'm still here." She screamed, not because she thought someone might be in the nursery anymore, but because in that moment she felt certain,
Someone was somewhere in the house. Police arrived within minutes. She told them everything. At first, they treated it like a possible break-in. They searched every room in the house, every closet, every crawl space, every window and door. They checked outside, too, the backyard, the side gate, the fence line. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, no muddy footprints, no fingerprints, no damaged locks, no indication that anyone had entered or left. One of the officers suggested it could have been signal interference. Another guessed it might have been a device malfunction. But none of them seemed fully convinced by their own explanations. Then, one of the officers picked up the baby monitor. He turned it over in his hands and frowned. And then he opened the battery compartment. And everything in the room went quiet. Because inside, there was nothing. No batteries, no backup power source, nothing that should have allowed it to turn on after being unplugged. And yet, somehow, it had. She moved out of that house less than a week later. But according to the story, there was one detail she never told police that night. The first time she heard the whisper, before the voice said, "He's not sleeping," she also heard another sound in the background, very faint, almost too quiet to notice. It sounded like a nursery chair, slowly rocking. And if that story wasn't disturbing enough, the next one is somehow even worse, because it started with something most people would ignore completely: a motion alert.
Story 2. The Boy in the Hallway. A woman living alone began receiving motion notifications from the hallway camera inside her apartment. At first, she didn't think much of it. Home cameras can be weird. They pick up shadows, changes in light, tiny glitches that mean nothing. And since the camera pointed down a narrow hallway between her bedroom and the front door, it wasn't exactly the most exciting part of the apartment. Still, the alerts kept happening. And after the third or fourth night, she started noticing a pattern. Every single alert came at exactly 3:13 a.m. Not around 3:13, not 3:12, not 3:14. Always 3:13. At first, she laughed it off. Then she changed the sensitivity settings. Then she rebooted the camera. Then she cleaned the lens. But none of that changed anything. Every night at exactly 3:13, her phone buzzed with the same notification: motion detected, hallway camera. And every time she opened the live feed, the hallway was empty. Eventually, it stopped being annoying and started becoming unsettling, because she lived alone and she knew her own apartment well enough to recognize when something felt wrong. The hallway had a certain stillness to it at night, a quiet she was used to. But after a week of those alerts, she started avoiding looking down it after dark. That's how irrational fear works. Even when nothing has happened yet, your mind starts preparing for it anyway. One night, she decided she was done being creeped out by a stupid camera. So instead of sleeping, she stayed awake. She turned off the TV, muted her phone, sat upright in bed with the live hallway feed open in her hand, and she waited. The apartment was completely silent. No neighbors, no cars outside, no sounds from the building. She checked the time every few minutes: 3:05, 3:08, 3:11, and then, at exactly 3:13 a.m., her phone vibrated. Motion detected. She looked at the screen immediately. At first, she didn't understand what she was seeing, because it wasn't movement in the usual sense. Nothing crossed the frame, nothing stepped into view. It was more like something had simply appeared. Standing in the middle of the hallway was a small, barefoot boy. He looked about 6 or 7 years old, thin, pale, wearing what looked like an oversized white shirt. His face was partly hidden in shadow, but she could tell one thing instantly: he wasn't moving, not even slightly. He was just standing there,
staring directly toward the camera. She dropped the phone onto the bed and ran to her bedroom door. She yanked it open and looked into the hallway. Nothing. No child, no footsteps, no sound of anyone running away, no open front door, no movement at all. The hallway was empty, and somehow that was worse, because if it had been a real child, at least there would have been an explanation, a break-in, a prank, something. But there was just nothing. She stood there for several seconds, completely frozen, before slowly stepping into the hallway. She checked every room, the bathroom, the kitchen, the coat closet near the entrance. Nothing. No one. She locked the front door again, even though it had already been locked. Then she backed into her bedroom and shut the door. Her hands were shaking so badly, she almost dropped the phone when she picked it back up. She replayed the camera clip, and there he was again, the same boy, the same posture, the same stillness. No blinking, no movement, just standing there. She watched the footage 3 times, then 4, and on the 5th replay, she noticed something that made her stomach drop. In the final second of the clip, the hallway was empty. The boy was gone, but just before the recording ended, something shifted at the edge of the frame. She paused it, zoomed in, and realized what she was looking at. The camera hadn't lost him. He had moved. He was no longer in the hallway. He was standing just outside the camera's angle, inside her bedroom doorway, watching her from behind. According to the story, she left the apartment before sunrise and never went back alone. Friends helped her move out later that week, but there was one part she only admitted months later. On the night she saw the boy, when she opened her bedroom door and looked into the empty hallway, she thought she heard something behind her. Not in front of her, not from the apartment, from inside her room. A soft voice, like a child whispering, very close to her bed. And it said, "You looked the wrong way." But as disturbing as that story is, the final one is the one that stayed with me the longest, because unlike the others, this one leaves behind proof, a message, a timestamp, and a question no one could answer.
Story 3. The last voicemail at 1:09 a.m. At 1:09 a.m., a man received a voicemail from his girlfriend. He had been asleep when the call came in, and if he hadn't checked his phone when he woke up, he might never have heard it at all. The notification was simple. 1 missed call, 1 voicemail. Nothing unusual, at least not at first. Still half asleep, he pressed play and immediately sat up. Her breathing was shaky, uneven, like she had been crying or trying very hard not to panic. For the first second or two, she didn't say anything. Then, in a whisper so quiet he had to replay it to be sure, she said, "Don't open the door." And then the message ended. That was it. No explanation, no sound of a struggle, no background noise, no second sentence. Just those 4 words. He called her back immediately. No answer. He called again and again. Still nothing. At first, he assumed she was scared and hiding from someone, or maybe in trouble and unable to speak. But after the 4th unanswered call, fear took over. He threw on clothes, grabbed his keys, and drove straight to her apartment. The entire drive there, he kept replaying the voicemail, listening for details, trying to hear anything in the background, a television, a voice, footsteps, a door closing, anything. But the voicemail was almost unnaturally quiet, just her breathing, and then the warning. When he pulled into the parking lot, he knew instantly that something was wrong. The entire front of the apartment building was lit by flashing red and blue lights. Police cars, an ambulance, officers moving in and out of the entrance. For a moment, he just sat there behind the wheel, staring, like his brain was refusing to process what he was seeing. Then he got out and ran toward the building. An officer stopped him before he made it to the entrance. He tried to explain who he was, tried to say her name, tried to tell them about the voicemail. But before he could finish, the officer's expression changed. Not shocked, not confused, just heavy. The kind of look people give you when they already know they're about to ruin your life. His girlfriend had been found dead inside her apartment. Investigators believed she had been dead for nearly an hour. He couldn't even respond at first. He just stared. Then, almost mechanically, he pulled out his phone and showed them the voicemail. At first, police assumed he had gotten the time wrong, or maybe misunderstood when it had been sent. But he hadn't. The timestamp was clear, 1:09 a.m. The problem was that her estimated time of death was around 12:45 a.m., which meant one thing. The voicemail had arrived roughly 20 to 25 minutes after she had already died. Police took the phone, copied the message, pulled call logs, checked with the phone provider, and every result pointed to the same impossible conclusion. The voicemail had definitely come from her phone at 1:09 a.m. There was no evidence anyone else had used it after her death. No fingerprints that didn't belong. No signs that another person had remained inside the apartment long enough to place the call. And maybe the strangest part of all was where her phone was found. According to the story, investigators located it in the kitchen, face down on the floor, with a dead battery. The voicemail should never have been sent, and yet it existed. Some people later suggested the message had been delayed by a network issue. Others guessed maybe the time of death estimate had been slightly off. But according to the people involved, neither explanation fully made sense. Because there was one final detail that made the whole thing worse. He didn't just replay the voicemail once or twice after that night. He listened to it dozens of times, obsessively, trying to hear something new, trying to find any clue she might have left behind. And after enough listens, he noticed something under her voice. Very faint, easy to miss. A knock. 3 slow knocks somewhere in the background, right before she whispered, "Don't open the door." To this day, the voicemail still exists, and it still ends the same way, with her breathing, the silence, and that final warning. A warning that arrived after she was already gone. If you made it this far, you probably understand why stories like these stay in people's heads. Not because they're loud, not because they rely on monsters or blood or jump scares, but because they feel possible. And sometimes, that's worse. If you want more disturbing stories pulled from the shadows, subscribe to the Shadow Ledger, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.